Prisoners of Azkaban, thinking of a master plan. Images of grandeur, watching us survive Aberdeen. Clap your hands, ready for a Madison of Pakistan. Richard Wright, black boy and rule to a black man. Early African or European, which was more supreme. The visions vary, this shit is scary. Inform your team. My dignitary, consigliere is on the team. My skin tone is on regime. I'm a war machine. Center who's casting all the stones. He can manage, but with the whole team advantage. Most people won't see the damage. Guess I won't need advantage if we plan to be companions. From solos from the hammer, we mimic and speak in Spanish. They vanish like Atlantis. Come and find out they can vanish before to the cameras. Welcome to this threshold into thoroughly thoughtful themed threads. Like a thermostat to the thermonuclear like thunderous thump in your thoracic thingamabobber. That's right, the heart. Also known as the New Earth Architect podcast. I'm your thrillingly theatrical thinking thumbnail, your theory thirsty quenching thief of indifference, and thankful host, Spencer Kiyoshi. I've been gone for a little bit. Let me just sort of get into my flow here, see how this goes. It's been about 2.5 months or so since I've recorded the podcast, so I know that my 68 viewers have been waiting patiently for my return. Oh, how pretentious. Key lime squeezed in my green tea with honey. That's where we're at, folks. I've evolved. Oh, shit. You know who hasn't evolved? Traditional media, traditional government. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. Now, normally I start off the podcast walking in singing with a joke or something like that. I just ain't got it. I want to talk about a couple different things today that could be deemed as a little prickly, right? We'll see. So it seems, though, that we've seen a little bit of a pivot. Okay. Now, the reason I've been gone is not because, not for any other reason except for I wanted to make sure that I was aligned in a certain kind of way, spiritually, mentally, physically, in all the ways, um, so that when I return to recording the podcast, I don't feel like I'm editing myself or self censoring or, creating contrived content. Um, that being said, been a lot of things on my heart, and it's not due to fear that I um, was not here speaking, doing what I do. It's just because I wanted to make sure that I was right within. Whatever that means to you is probably quite similar. I'm an intuitive, so I want to be as balanced as possible. I know that there's no perfect time, but for me, the time is now, and I'll tell you why. Excuse me. Get to working, T. We've seen a pivot, haven't we, recently? In the traditional media regarding the war in Palestine. It's not the war in Israel, is it? It's the war in Palestine. So I've created a couple notes today. Normally in my podcast, I just sort of go for what you know and free flow, and it can seem disjointed and joke, and then I typically come back full circle. But right now, I have a couple speaking points that I want to express in a more systematic, methodic fashion. like I said, I'm evolving. So let's look at the media pivot. There's a number of different traditional media outlets that have, quite frankly, supported genocide. And not only did they support genocide, but they propagated information to paint the state of Israel as the non aggressor, as the victims. Now, listen, what happened on October 7th? Obviously, a travesty. But from at least a week out from that point, I think we knew what was happening. A lot of people started saying, well, this is a little uneven insofar as retaliatory type actions taken by the state of Israel towards the people of Gaza under the guise of those being Hamas that they were targeting. We know now. Today is May 28th, 2005. It is 4:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That means it has been 599 days. So 600 days tomorrow from October 7th. What have we seen thus far? We've seen 28 children killed per day. That's 16,500 children. I'm not naming, I'm not noting the other civilian population that has been slaughtered, murdered. Okay? Um, so now what we're seeing here is a pivot, right? Most of the traditional media has aligned itself with Israel, right? We've seen that. There is no denying that, right? We have now a lot of data, a lot of content, a lot of proof that shows that that has been the case. At what point did they begin to pivot, right? When did these conglomerations and these corporate bought and sponsored institutions begin to pivot? When did the talking heads and um, figureheads and faces and talking heads of these institutions begin to pivot? I'll tell you when. Like this week, maybe? When the court of public opinion obviously began to sway, once people begin to awaken that in mass, understanding the collective saying that no, 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 okay, what are we doing here? But we've known this, right? What I'm saying is that it's been ignored, right? Just blatantly ignored. We've seen the protests, we've seen the activism, we've seen the social media hashtags, we've seen and felt and understood for a long time that this is beyond wrong. This travesty, this genocide, I'll say it again, that's been taking place. But they pivot because it affects the bottom line, right? That's why we're seeing the big pivot. The of course the court of public opinion, that being a barometer in swaying, that is because the public controls that bottom line, don't we? Insofar as how we consume information, material goods, whatever's being advertised or lobbied for in these media spaces. So they had to cater to the shareholders and corporate interests, right? Meaning that, and trust me, um, money is being made on both sides of this. Of course, right? Money is being made on both sides of this war in that arena, in that space. I can't call it a war. It's not a fucking war. We're creating the shift in the narrative now. Okay. So the collective, the people, understand that we are now making incremental progress in changing the discourse, right? Before the pivot, it was not merely complicitness, though, right? It was not the nature of being complicit. This was a highly organized and concerted effort to paint Israel as the good guys, right? As the victims. A lot of us has known all along that that was never the case. That being said, I alone, right? I'm no judge. Um, but we collectively must hold these people, these industries, these institutions accountable and not let things go on as business as usual from this point. Okay. That's what I'm speaking to now. In this present moment, we're looking at this apathy, this propagation and propaganda used against us and used more importantly against um, the murder of innocent civilians, because that is what it does. It allows for the state of Israel and the Zionists to continue what they're doing. And now, as we find out, we get closer and closer. Now that there is this little bit of deviation and this pushback and this digression, right, from the unwilling or unwavering support for these Zionists, we're starting to see that they just don't give a fuck anyway, right? That's always been the case. This is not brand new. You understand? Um, so to date, we've yet to see the state of Israel, along with the global supporters of Zionism, right, make that pivot. Okay, so yes, the media is a big force, obviously, an arm actually to um, the state, and just because they're pivoting, these people looking to save face and save their bottom line. Excuse me, their bottom line, right? Um, that doesn't mean that Netanyahu and anyone who supports this um, is going to back down at this point. Um, so I don't have the answers, right? I don't. Who am I? But I could tell you where we could start. We could start simply by stopping dropping bombs on children and innocent civilians. I've seen some stuff out there, I'm on social media, and about China possibly giving aid and airdrop support to Gaza um, in the face of this tyranny. I don't know even if that's true or not. And I'll tell you why. We're in the age of discernment here, and it's hard to fucking even tell really what the truth is out there, right? So bear with me here. It's hard to tell what's even true. You can go on TikTok, you can go on Instagram, YouTube, and see these videos and they're AI stuff, or they're just, some other people that are outside of the traditional media landscape saying, hey, there's support taking place. And listen, I do my homework where I can. And I still haven't been able to really truly discern whether that's the case. If there's, really support coming in. I know, you know, but that in itself is almost inconsequential to what it is that we don't know. I mean, that to what it is that we do know, right? The most important thing that we all know, which is that Israel is continuing to do what they've been doing, right? So, yeah, I don't know if there's more aid and support coming in and resources and fucking, food supplies and uh, aid workers or journalists. I mean, I didn't even touch on the amount of journalists that are being killed here. Um, I'll maybe look up that statistic now, but I think it's something over like 1,500, something fucking ridiculous because they don't want anyone to see what's taking place. Um, and maybe that's part of the pivot too, is that now somewhere in that community, people are saying my peers are getting killed. What the fuck? I don't know. Fuck your peers. No pun intended. Piers Morgan. Fuck you, Piers Morgan. Fucking scumbag. Anyway, I digress. We know enough. We've known enough. We don't need all the other accoutrements and things of that nature to say, oh, this is what should tip the scales for us deviating from our unwavering fucking support for these guys. You understand what I mean? You dig? Right? I hope I'm not sounding preachy, am I? I mean, we have the information. We know what we know. This has been the case. Okay. Um, what creates the shift when you're dealing with a state that is supported by Zionists around the world, right? You want to look up the actual definition of Zionism? Zionism, an international effort working in the beginning for a Jewish homeland and later for the support of Israel. And later for the support of Israel. See, the Jewish homeland, I get it. All right. But in 1947, when Great Britain decided to just, how about here? That looks good, right? Let's get them out of the way, right? Since that happened, there's just been unwavering support, and there's been a lot of power gained by the state of Israel, and they hold a lot of leverage somehow, some way, allegedly, over other governing factions in the global community. America, obviously included. What does that mean? I don't want to start digging deep into the Mossad, I guess. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But I can tell you that there seems to be a lot of threads of connection here that seemed ultimately conspiratorial at first. What the? And then now, as we are seeing, this is just the truth. Media control. Yeah. Banks. Yeah. All these systems of power and structures of power. Yes, they're being ran by these sorry about that, guys. Someone's going crazy with their Ryobi leaf blower, and there's no leaves down there. Leave me alone. Anyway, the one place I didn't want to lose my train of thought and start over was in this podcast. Okay? I apologize. Hmm. So, Jewish homeland, right? Let's look at that statistic. Side notes here in my notepad. I put this note down because I wrote the header here: anti-Semitic towards non-Semitic peoples. Roughly 50% of Semitic Jews populated Israel in 1948, which was 1 year after the establishment of the state. Who are the other 50%? Let's start with the first 50 fucking percent. These are Europeans, Turks, Polacks. Just stating the facts, ma'am. After the travesty of the Holocaust, okay? Because I want to make sure that I'm clear that I'm not talking about people of the Jewish faith, and I'm not talking about people of the Jewish descent and race and ethnicity, right? I'm talking about Zionists specifically. And in 1947, there were a lot of people, Europeans, that somehow took up the Jewish faith and were given this state. Not the Ethiopians, not the Eritreans, not a lot of the original, I'd call it maybe 12 tribes of Israel. They're a derivative of Africa and the Middle East. But Great Britain said, we're going to give this land here, smack dab in the Middle East, right? Jerusalem, the Holy Land, to this kind of Jewish person, the European Jew. Surprisingly, I guess we'll never know, being that they don't do DNA tests there. So you can't really discern whether or not the people there have any true Jewish descent, right? That's sort of trippy. So, yeah, an international effort working in the beginning for a Jewish homeland and later for the support of Israel. So, Great Britain said, okay, right here, fuck the other people that have been there for thousands of years, right? That's what's happened. And then we had the settlers, right? The settlers take stake in that land, right? That's what they call them, settlers. I'm talking about the people that just go into a family's home who have lived there for hundreds of years, even longer, and say, this is ours now. You got to scram. Squatters' rights. What the fuck? Right? That's what we're looking at here. Occupation, occupiers, colonizers is what it is that we're talking about here. So, yeah, the state of Israel is not pivoting, right? We're seeing through it. Media is starting to sort of peel back a little bit, right? Um, and listen, I'm not talking about scorn or wrath or revenge or anything like that. I'm talking about balance, justice, truth, right? But first, it's got to stop. How do we go about that? And I'm asking. Like I said, I don't have any of the answers, but we can start with the ceasing of dropping bombs and killing innocent children and civilians. If Hamas is an issue, go in and get them. Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe I'm just, as a prior military operator, did what I did, whatever, right? Maybe I'm ignorant to the thing. I didn't serve. I don't know, right? You can't go target, no? Hmm. Your excuse is that they're using human shields. So, as somebody once just recently eloquently said, okay, so a guy grabs your wife and kids as hostages, you're just going to mow them down? No distinction? Just to get that guy? All right. So, look, this is our humanity at stake. Okay? Um, I'm just at a loss. I you know, we depend on our government, don't we, to handle things like this. We depend on the world community, the global community, to step in and do something, and we're not seeing it. The feeling of helplessness is, obviously nothing in comparison to the poor souls that are experiencing day to day, you know, their families and loved ones just being decimated. Um, it's tough. So part of the reason I took 2.5 months off from recording this podcast, because I didn't know how to reconcile helplessness myself, and I'm not looking to make it about me, but I'm just like, I haven't had faith in the government for a long fucking time. I don't, um, geez, you know, world government or otherwise, local government. I don't give a fuck. Government cheese, shit, fuck, nigga. I don't trust government cheese. The government peanut butter though. I don't know. No, I think the government cheese was better than the peanut butter. I digress. Um, but I didn't know really how to reconcile, and it's like for 2.5 months I'm like, well, I can talk about this. Let's talk about Diddy. Let's talk about Ibrahim Traore, which I would like to discuss in another podcast because it also shows the links and the tendrils of control in which the Zionist state actually has, along with the aiding and abetting of the U.S. government and other governments around the world. That story, if you haven't seen, Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, who's looking to liberate and unite the peoples of Africa, it is huge. It is, I won't call it greater than for sure, but it is at par with and connected to the magnitude of what is happening in Gaza, right? And in other places around the world. By liberating Palestine, the people of Palestine, um, that singular and non complex act ushers us to the threshold of liberating humanity. I'll say that again. By liberating Palestine and the people of Palestine, that singular and very non complex act ushers us to the threshold of liberating humanity. That is what we're looking at. That is the gravity of this situation. It's not just something that's happening over out in the Middle East. It's not just some little strip of fucking land that is to be annexed This is not a political event. And I am non-religious, but that does not mean that certain things that we've seen foretold in the Bible and through the history of man through some of the religiosity, these things are not mutually exclusive, right? I would say that what is happening is of biblical fucking proportions. You understand? So by liberating the people of Palestine, it ushers us into the threshold of liberating humanity, because that is how deep the arms and tendrils and tentacles of control go. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not. Although you give me enough time, I will find the fucking connection to your $10 eggs. I'm not blaming the Jews. And I want to really reiterate that. And I'm getting tired of having to do that because it's fucking clear, you know what I mean? What people are saying in this regard. We're not talking about people of the Jewish faith. We're not talking about Jews. We're not talking about anti Semitism. We're talking about a class of government and people and supporters of a certain type of state, the Zionist movement, that are egregious and monstrous in their acts, while the world stands idly by as it happens. So, insofar as the tendrils of control, I wrote, when we speak in reference to the construct, right? I'm going to go ahead and jump into the spiritual dimensions and spiritual realms a little bit here. Um, I've just my fucking visa in the 3D just now fucking expired. Excuse my language. I I just became a little bit exhausted. Excuse me. When we speak in reference to the construct, who or what truly govern the social dynamics of commerce, corporatist agenda, media control and manipulation, and even the influence of other global governments, where do the arrows point? You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to start making the connections here, right? Right? I think we all know the answer to that. And a lot of us have been afraid to. Granted, we get all these other different fucking sidebar antics that take place and take focus off of the fact of the matter, right? Whether that's, and I don't know whether to think it's genius or, mental illness or a great hybrid combination of all of the above that is Kanye West. But as an artist and a sort of insane person myself, I get what he's trying to do regarding censorship towards this matter, right? The information is out there. It's not a conspiracy, guys. So, being that our governments are doing nothing, being that the media, hey, maybe we'll start getting a little traction because the media is starting to backpedal to save their fucking asses, right? Their bottom lines. Um, I try to be solution based, right? That's why I didn't want to come on here within the last 2.5 months and just create this echo chamber, this vacuumed echo chamber of perceptively negative things. I didn't want to be um, a projection myself of the chaos that everyone is already sort of tensely feeling all around them. Right? You're seeing it everywhere, And the thing is that the what you are seeing and what is being fed to us, right, is manipulated in such a way that you feel like you're almost being abused by it. Side note to that, I think that some of us are feeling that everywhere we turn, seemingly, we're being taken advantage of, manipulated, abused, coerced, forced into, right? The- Some level of acceptance of things just being how they are. This is just how it is. Your food is fake. Sorry. Your healthcare is bullshit. Sorry, pharmaceuticals are going to be the lobby. Sorry, this is how it works. The education system ultimately is going to continue the curriculum developed by the Rockefellers. Sorry, this is what it is, right? So I try to be more solution based, right? Even if I don't have the answers, I still like to at least pose out there the truth of the matter that the universe and God work in expressions of duality, which means that, and if you can muster up the ability to surrender to the truth that we know nothing, but the universe works in a cyclical, cyclical fashion, that what is on the horizon is to be grand and beautiful, right? Because we are seeing the darkest depths of how far certain factions of humanity are willing to go to maintain and keep control and power. So if you feel helpless, if you feel like a lot of this is out of your immediate control, which is correct, now and now and now, at least, then what we do is we we go inward and we take accountability for us. We take accountability and responsibility for our self development growth of empathy, love, joy, service to others, so that that lends itself to the collective. Because, like I said in the beginning of this, we are swaying and changing. Although it be incremental and small now, we are creating a shift. We're here to experience what is taking place, and it's tough. So we need to fortify ourselves with the ability to process this stuff and not become bitter and hateful and then radiate that outward into the world because there's enough of that. Hmm. So if you feel helpless, you start working your shit out. It starts with the individual. It truly does. Right? And I know these people in power, we have no, yeah. Well, remember the conversation not too long ago, one of the last podcasts that I put out there about the boycott, right? There are certain things that we can do. Things are within our awareness, but who here has been holding steady on that line? Let's be real. I'll be real. I just bought a whole bunch of 7-Eleven cookies yesterday. You know, that's not the point, but it is. Everything is a microcosm to the next microcosm. A lot of us feel like, yes, we can do better. Accept yourself for now. Right now, this is where we're at. We have the awareness that we do. We're feeling for other people. Pray, include these states of the world in your meditations. Allow these things to resonate with you in a way that allows for growth, healing, and service. And if we could drop out financially from these institutions, if you can afford to do that, if we can, become a bit more staunch in our approach to understanding the connective tissue of these corporations and Zionists and the food that we're eating, the care that we get in our health, um, and even our digital diet, digestion, what it is that we're taking in from these entities. Institutions, yes, these are entities. This is energetic. This is frequency. This is resonant, somatic type shit that is entering into our bodies that we need to clear. Yes? I wrote a note here that says the synchronous nature of children dying and the need to heal the inner child. Now, I'm not going to get all Freudian over here. I'm not about the psychobabble. I don't know shit about it, really. I'm no authority on nothing, on anything for that matter. I'm an authority on my own experience. And it happens to sort of fit into some of the stuff out there in the spiritual world that is consistent with the nature of healing, right? We have to heal in order to grow. So I wrote that down, the synchronous nature of these children dying and the need for us to heal our inner child. When we start peeling back the layers of our conditions that create a state of being that we are not pleased with, where there is suffering, where there is dis-ease, where there is a void of emptiness, etc., unhealthy habits and patterns, right? When we start peeling that back, we go back in the linear scale of time also and start recognizing, well, okay, this is sort of derivative from my childhood. Yeah. So that's part of your journey. Let's do that. If you feel helpless for these kids, And you can go inward to address your inner child and heal. Do that. If you want to do something for those children, and this is not a guilting or anything like that, if you want to do something for those kids, those 16,500 children thus far that have perished because of this, go back to your inner child. Go back to that child. Console that child. Show that child love, right? So that you can begin nurturing and fostering, recalibrating, reconditioning yourself outside of this construct. We manifest that outward to our neighbors, to our loved ones, to the collective, right? That's how we create the shift moving forward. Got any other ideas? Better ideas? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. Anything at this point is welcome, right? Well, normally I go about an hour or so. I don't know. I think I've said what I've needed to say. Here's one thing, actually. We hear a lot about the inner child. We understand, right? For the most part. A lot of us understand that in the healing journey, it consists of going back to that child that was hurt, abused, traumatized, neglected, marginalized. We go back there and we do the work, right? And we bring that back into the present. And we say, okay, I am now peeling back these conditions and these layers of hurt so that I can now begin to heal. I get it. I understand that now, right? Moving forward, and my podcast is called The New Earth Architects, right? It has a lot to do with building from a place of our nature. Most of our nature before the extreme conditioning over time lies within that inner child, right? That version of ourselves. Don't stop short of then visiting the child before the trauma, the abuse, the pain, right? Because that's also worth bringing back to the present. That child, right? The joyful, curious, imaginative, non judgmental version of yourself. The creative, inspired, loving child, right? I always want to make sure that I add that because that's where the magic is. Kid you not. That is our nature. Explore, create, share lovingly, joyfully, exuberantly, without prejudice. Well, thanks for joining me. Hope this wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer hour. Make sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe. Right, those are the things that we do here on the social medias. Um, so that's here on YouTube. Also available on Spotify. I have a couple episodes now, episode 1 through 3 on Spotify. I will be releasing to Rumble soon, also. And also check me out live on TikTok. Okay, I do have a TikTok live. I have a lot of my little snippet content there on TikTok. I am now have an agency live streaming through TikTok. And I look to take that a bit more seriously because I'm finding out actually that there is quite a bit of reach through that platform. Genuine, actual, um, you know, communing with people. And it's really, really cool. So look me up there, check out my content. And until then, as always, love, light, and blessings to you. All right. Bye bye. Spencer Kiyoshi, Sydney Polk out. That's my government name. Don't worry about that. Who knows? I didn't say it. You said it. I don't know. What are we gonna do here? I just don't know.